These are Danner Underpasses. I'm going to show you how to go from this to this. So what are these exactly? Well, they're Oxford shoes styled after the ever popular Danner hiking boots. It doesn't have the flap tongue, but it does have a set of D-rings for eyelets, one set of speed hooks. On the outsole, looks like it's natural rubber, then a rubber slip sole, 360 stitch down construction. On the inside, feels like split leather insole, padded heel, and padded collar. And we only need a couple things to restore it. First things first, saddle soap. In the tin of the saddle soap is a little bit of water. We're gonna have two brushes. This will be for applying saddle soap, and this will be for just general brushing of any dirt or particulates on the surface before we soap it down. So with the laces out, let's get to brushing. Light brushing all done. And typically when you try to restore a Danner shoe or a boot, you'll find that in the gusseted tongue there would be a lot of dirt and grass or rocks or something like that. Here there's nothing because probably it doesn't have the flap, but if you ever to restore one of these hiking boot types, just know that a lot of stuff gets caught in there. As far as the condition of the leather, you're seeing some loss of material in the toe. But actually for the rest of the boot, it's just lost its original color almost completely. The thing about these Danner boots and shoes is that the type of leather that they use isn't necessarily the highest quality as of recent. Anytime you see a white label on a shoe, that would have been a shoe manufactured from the early 2000s and forward. Something happened around that time where a lot of the leather that they use has some type of coating on it, like a paint or a plastic. I'm not sure if it's plastic, but you can kind of see the very faint remnants of that coating, just darker brown areas here. A little bit's left on the toe, but the rest of the shoe is basically really devoid of it. This could be some of the original coloring, or it can just be really matted. The finish of the leather is kind of like a nubuck, where it feels completely sanded down. And it's very possible when the leather was manufactured that it was nubuck, it was sanded down, and then they applied that plasticized coating over it. The boots that you're seeing down to my left, these are all vintage, pre-1990, maybe 80s or 70s mountain light hiking boots. They have much better leather because they hold their structure really well still. It doesn't have that plasticized coating on it. Of course, these boots have lost a lot of color, but you can still really feel those darker brown tones on the left shoe of the pairs. This, it is incredibly light in color. And I hope to restore some of that, the vibrance of the brown that you saw in the left shoe of this. Once again, this is what we're aiming for, right? So the next step is going to be applying saddle soap to the shoe. There's a little bit of water in the top part of the tin. and you'll take your dauber brush, put it into the saddle soap, and try to work up a light lather in the water and in the tin, and then continue the lathering on the shoe itself. To help get the dirt off and not let the water soak too much into the shoe unnecessarily, just try to get some paper towels, wipe it down real quick in between the brushing, and I think it would make the drying process much shorter and maybe protect the leather from any unnecessary damage. You can tell from the paper towel it's a little bit dirty, so I might give it another round of saddle soap before we call the cleaning step complete. For Danner specifically, you really want to try to get as much cleaning done near the eyelets and the D-hooks, just because there's so much abrasion from the laces, and also when you're cleaning, if the D-hooks are kind of flapping around, it might be preventing your brush from actually cleaning very well. So just be very conscious about it. Obviously on the stitch down area, the stitching here and the leather, it's probably going to be the most dirty if you are restoring this type of shoe. So that's where you want to pay attention to. Now Danners don't typically have this natural gum rubber sole, and I didn't show cleaning it, but if you need to clean a similar type of sole, just warm water and Dawn dish soap and a lot of scrubbing can get you pretty far. But I didn't want to do it too much more, just because the connection between the gum sole and the slip sole looked a little bit compromised with age. So I was figuring it's really hard to keep gum rubber soles clean anyways. Like once you take it out on one day's walk around town, it'll turn completely black. So a quick cleaning, but if you have that type of sole, don't spend too much time on it. But otherwise, most of the time you'll see, like on the left, most of these are going to be Vibram soles on similar hiking shoes. All right, saddle soap is done. We need to let the shoe dry completely before moving on to the next step, which is conditioning. I'll put it outside for a couple hours in the California sun. I think that should do the trick, but safe bet for everybody watching, maybe 24 hours before you move on to that next step. Okay, the shoe is all dry. The next step is adding conditioner. I'm gonna go with Bick 4. You could use oils if you'd like, just be very conscious of the fact that oil conditioners would 100% make this leather incredibly dark. All right, let's get to it. conditioning all done. That was really easy. You can tell the color is starting to come back already, but this can also just because the shoe is once again a little bit wet. We want to let this dry completely. It can be accelerated by putting it back out in the sun, using a hair dryer to let the oils penetrate as deep as possible. And we'll also find out if there's really dry areas that we need to address with a little bit more conditioner before we get to the shoe cream. With the Bick 4 fully absorbed into the shoe, it's a good time for you to evaluate your shoe's coloring. It didn't change all that much from when we applied the Bick 4, so I know that the medium brown will work decently well. And obviously I did one of the shoes of the pair already, but do take a look at what you're working with and make sure that the shoe cream color that you select still matches the shoe's coloring or your end result that you're going for. All right, the next step of the process is going to be brushing the shoe a little bit to make sure there's nothing left on the surface before we start applying the shoe cream. Speaking of shoe cream, think about how we're going to apply it. Obviously, we want to do the whole shoe on the first go around. And then identify the areas that are very stiff on your shoe. The toe stiffener and the heel counter area are very obvious for most shoes and boots, and that's where we can maybe apply much more coloring. Maybe upwards of 3, 4, 5, 6 different layers of shoe cream could be necessary to get, for example, some of this coloring back. It's not necessarily coloring the leather, it's just adding tints of coloring over the leather itself. This is just pigmented wax, really. But the areas that are bending a lot, like right here, you can see, those are areas that probably building up a lot of shoe cream, it wouldn't be very effective. The moment you put your shoe on and the moment you start walking, those areas that are flexing, the very soft areas, they're going to start cracking, meaning that the wax layer that's giving you that kind of coloring and shine is going to start flaking off. Not necessarily a big deal, but you would have to brush your shoes a lot, and eventually those areas will just end up looking like they are right now. But the first layer to cover the whole shoe, that's what we're going for. I'm using gloves because it's just easier for me to apply. You know, some people would tell you to use towels or rags. I find gloves are just fine. If you're working with D-rings on your pair of boots, just like these Danners have, or most Danner boots have, you can get the cream off with like a paper towel, a wet paper towel. So you don't have to be too careful. So do take note that the stitching on these Danner shoes are brown, similar to the color of the leather. So I'm not necessarily being as careful as where I'm applying the shoe cream to. Should your shoes not have similar color stitching to the leather, be very aware that the shoe cream will definitely pigment those threads. Okay. So the first coat of the shoe cream is complete. We're going to want to let this dry for maybe 15 minutes, and then we'll use one of our horsehair brushes to brush off the excess. Likely, a vast majority of your shoe cream will not stay on the shoe. So that means that your brush will build up a lot of shoe cream on its bristles. Having a couple horsehair brushes available to you for this particular project would make your life a lot easier, so you're not constantly washing and then having to wait for your brush to dry. So we'll be right back. Okay, it's been 15 minutes. Shoe cream has dried. The next step is going to be a light brushing and then another coating of the shoe cream. Let's do a progress check to see how we're coming compared to the left shoe of the pair. And here are both shoes. And even after the first coating of the shoe cream and after the conditioning, we're essentially there. After light brushing, you can see the shine starting to develop as we polish the waxes that are in the shoe cream. And we'll go ahead and start adding the second coating. Now that we're past the toe, likely it's going to be sparingly. For the main body of the shoe, I don't think you really have to do too much as far as the second coat. I think additional coats will really focus on the stiffer areas, as the coloring has mostly come back already. So maybe just some light, a very light coat. And it could be an opportunity to kind of focus on these darker areas, which are from the laces braiding against the leather for years and years. Like I mentioned earlier, this Kelly brand of shoe cream is actually what Danner uses in their recrafting program. I saw it in a YouTube video of them explaining the process of how they resole their shoes. Well, certain shoes can be resoled, not all of them. And Kelly's actually happens to be a sub-brand or a subsidiary of Fiebing's, which makes the saddle soap I was using at the beginning of this video. And Danner uses saddle soap to clean their shoes as well. Okay, second application is complete. We'll let this dry again and probably do one more coat on the toe, and that'll be it. With the shoe dry after the second application of shoe cream, I'll be using a new brush, buffing it a little bit and seeing how that second coat looks. It's very possible that I don't need to do a third for even the toe or for the heel counter. We'll find out right now. And just as a heads up as far as technique goes, when you're using a horsehair brush to polish your shoe, it's really about speed and a very light touch. You're not trying to like push into the shoe with a lot of pressure. It's really a very light pressure with some speed and time. And already the toe looks quite good. There's going to be some natural patinaing. I think trying to hide that is of no use. I think everyone knows your shoe is a little old. It doesn't hurt to have an old shoe, and it doesn't hurt to have a little patina as well. Okay, I mean, I think that looks very, very good. I don't think we have to do much more than this. I don't think it's necessary to add another application of shoe cream depending on the state of your boots and shoes. Feel free to add more, or just, like I said, in the stiff areas, but I think the color took very, very well, and I don't see any need to continue that. A little side note, if you have a collar, a padded collar on your boot or shoe, I don't see a real need to try to get the coloring back in with shoe cream. I think it's really just all about conditioning. As you're putting your shoes on and off, it's likely gonna come off anyways, the shoe cream coloring that is. It's not gonna hold. So don't really spend too much time trying to restore that area. Just keep it really well conditioned. The last step of the process is just putting the laces back on the shoe. I think it looks really, really good. We'll compare it to the left shoe very shortly. But if you have any shoe cream coloring on the metal hardware of your shoe, maybe a paper towel, a slightly damp paper towel, and a little bit of friction can get that off. But most of the time, the brushing of your shoe with your horsehair brush will get a lot of the coloring off. And there she is. Okay, all done. And as you can see, the shoes, they came out great. They look like each other. I'm not sure if they look like this out of the factory, but if you have a pair of old leather shoes, or if you come across a pair of leather shoes thrifting, I think you can breathe a lot of life back into them with a couple dollars of material, a little bit of time, and honestly, maybe mere minutes of cleaning per shoe, with most of the process being taken up by drying in between the steps. Thanks so much for watching.